We just finished talking about self-defense, that is, defending ourselves. But let's talk about other times where this defense might play at hand. What about using it in other situations, maybe to protect somebody else or to protect your property? And what if an intruder is coming in your home or in your business? Can you use force to defend in those situations? You can, but it is going to be different from state to state. But here's generally what we're going to work with. The old law, under the common law, you could not use force to defend somebody else unless you had some sort of special relationship or some duty was involved. Remember, we talked about that with regards to an omission to act, meaning a parent protecting a child, a spouse protecting a spouse. That law is no longer in play. The modern view is you can come to anybody's defense as long as that person could have asserted self-defense. Okay? So anyone can defend anyone to the same degree that that person could use force. Fist to fist, not fist to guns. And the same 4 elements must be present that we just discussed. Unprovoked, intimate attack, immediate attack. I had trouble with that one. Immediate attack, defendant used a reasonable degree of force, and the force is necessary to repel that attack. So those are the general 4 elements of self-defense. They must also apply if you're trying to defend somebody else. And again, the force can't be more than what is necessary to repel the attack. So let's take an example. A movie is being filmed in the Adirondacks about a notorious murderer. He killed several people in the Adirondacks. So one murder takes place in a secluded area, the Adirondack Park. This is a true story. It's one of the trials, by the way, part of the project. Okay, part of the scene is being shot. There's an actor who's playing the killer. We'll call that person Rob. And in the scene, he's tackling a young female hiker who's another actor. He pushes her to the ground and is sitting on top of her. His knees have her arms pinned down, and he has a knife above her. It's over his head, and the camera is shooting from a distance up in a tree. And here comes just random hiker Joe, who's out just hiking along in the Adirondacks, and he sees this scene. He does not see the movie being filmed. He just sees Rob with his knife over this woman. So he takes out his machete that he was using to weed whack, and he throws it at Rob, hitting him in the head, killing him. So now hiker Joe is arrested for killing Rob. Can he argue self-defense? Under that old common law, he would not be able to use that because there's no defense of others unless there was a special relationship. Let's talk about the modern view. You have to meet those 4 elements, but here it's not a real attack. It was being filmed, but Joe thought it was a real attack. Does that play a role? Under the model penal code, the rule is one can defend another when under the circumstances as the actor believes them to be, the person whom he seeks to protect would be justified in using such protective force. So what did he believe? It's his subjective belief. We're not looking at the reasonable person. We're looking at defendant's or the actor's subjective belief that the individual defended could use force legally in self-defense. That will stand. That will be able to, he can use that to defense because that's what it looked like to him. Does that make sense? Under the circumstances, it's sad, but it's justifiable. I'm going to use that word. It's justifiable. So it's pretty straightforward. When you're defending another human being, you have to meet the same 4 elements that it would be if you were defending yourself. And if there's these are the circumstances that you defendant actor reasonably believe them to be, and then you will be justified, even though in this scene, even though in this example, it was a movie being filmed. How about your property? All jurisdictions have laws regarding using force to protect your real and personal property. Let's talk about property. What is property? Let's say real property is what? Your land, your home that sits on that land, real property. And think of personal property as anything else. Your laptop, computer, your cell phone, any other movable item is personal property. I won't get into it, but also like intellectual property, things you can't, intangible property. But just think of personal property as everything that's not real property. And of course, the defense of your property will depend and vary based on what jurisdiction you are in. But when do you think you can use force to defend your property? Can you use deadly force? What do I mean by force? You can have force without killing somebody. But do you think you can kill someone from walking onto your land and taking your lawn chair? How about taking your dog? That's a hard one. Any dog lovers? That's a hard one. But you can't use deadly force. Can't use deadly force to protect your property. Can you give chase? Can you chase the person? Take it back? You sure can. Can somebody standing on your property, they're trespassing, you tell them to get off and they don't? Can you push them off? I wouldn't recommend it. I would call the police, but under the law, technically you could. This is what our model penal code says. The use of force upon or toward another person is justifiable when the actor believes that such force is imminently necessary to prevent or terminate an unlawful entry upon land or carrying away of tangible, movable property. So if you believe such force is necessary, you can use that force because they're not supposed to be there. But how much? How much force? What's reasonable under the circumstances? Okay? What's reasonable under the circumstances? The use of force is justified when the actor believes that such force is immediately necessary to retake tangible property. No deadly force to protect personal property. So if someone's stealing your dog, you can't run out with a shotgun and start shooting at them. I believe this example is in the book, but let's go through it here. Kelsey sees Keith, her stepbrother, approaching her brand new car with a key in his hand. It appears that Keith is about to scrape the paint on the door of the car with the key. Kelsey tackles Keith to prevent him from doing so. Kelsey's arrested for assault. Let's say Keith hits his head on the ground. Got a big bump. Does she have a defense? Is she defending her property? Does that fit the definition? The use of force, what's her force? She's tackling him. The use of force upon or toward the person of another is justifiable when the actor believes that such force is imminently necessary to prevent or terminate an unlawful entry or other trespass onto land or trespass against or the lawful carrying away of tangible property. I think we're looking at that trespassed against, meaning I know it sounds like, oh, they're getting into the car, trespass, stepping onto. The language means she's protecting her property from damage. If he was to key the car, then he'd probably be arrested for some sort of criminal mischief, or that's what it's called in New York when you damage somebody else's property intentionally. So here, Kelsey taking reasonable steps to tackle him from preventing that to happen is reasonable under the circumstances. How about Keith testifies that he was simply going to Kelsey, Keith testifies that he was simply going to, give Kelsey the key, which he left in the house. I left out a word there. Is Kelsey claim of defense of property still proper? Basically what he's saying is, I didn't intend to key the car. I intended to simply give Kelsey the key, which she left. Does it matter? Nope, it doesn't matter. She still has a claim for self-defense because it's reasonably believable that how she saw the circumstances was that he was going to key her car, right? This is kind of a flip on the guy who throws the machete at Rob. A mistaken belief, but it's reasonable. What about instead of tackling Keith, Kelsey pulls out a gun and shoots Keith in the arm? Can she say defensive property? And I hope you're shaking your head no, because deadly force, that would be considered deadly force. And it's not about her shooting him and killing him, it's about using something that could cause death, i.e. the gun in this situation. So no, she does not have a defense. Let's talk about defending our real property. We just talked about defending our personal property. Let's talk about defending our land and ejecting people who trespass. So how do you deal with trespassers? What is trespassing, by the way? Basically, you're on someone else's property without their permission, their land. And the property owners have a right to eject you. Most states require a demand to leave first. And if that fails to comply within a reasonable time, if that person fails to comply within a reasonable time, you can eject them. You can pick them up and toss them off your property. What degree of force can you use? Reasonable force. No deadly force. No deadly force can be used unless the trespasser threatens the immediate deadly force against the person. Okay? Then it would be considered just regular self-defense, not defense of property. So what's reasonable? Get someone off your property. You can shove them off. You can take them by the arm and wander them off your property. I would recommend calling law enforcement. So just to kind of recap here, with land, this seems to be a little bit issue here in New York State. You might be thinking or asking, oh, no trespassing signs, right? Generally, land has to be posted, no trespassing. That's kind of the notice you get. But for me, and my personal opinion only, is that if you don't own it, if it's not yours and you're on it, you're trespassing. You don't need a sign to tell you no trespassing. There'll be signs actually not really lots of times, but if it's state-owned land and you're able to use it, I think most of the time there's some signs relative to that, or you have notice of what is for state use. But if it's not yours, you might want to think you're trespassing. And if somebody asks you to leave, you say, I don't see a no trespassing sign. Well, now I'm telling you. And there's your demand to leave. And if you fail to comply within that reasonable time, and what's reasonable time? Can you meander around and stick around and finish hunting or fishing or doing whatever you're doing on the land? No, you kind of have to get off the land fairly quickly. Defending your home. We talked about defending your land, defending your home. The castle doctrine, as it's referred to in most states. Colorado was the first to enact such a law, and it's actually called, makes me laugh, Make My Day, self-defense of property statute. Make My Day. And this is you defending, or one defending their residence. The home is considered sacred, your castle, and you can use deadly force to defend it. Most states have this law enacted, including New York, which allows for the use of deadly force. Of course, you just can't go shooting willy-nilly. There are some elements that have to exist for this to be a defense of the use of deadly force to protect your home. Those elements are the intruder must enter or be in the process of entering. The residence must be occupied when entry occurs. So there's got to be people there, the people who live there. And the resident, who is the defendant, because they're the one who's doing the shooting, objectively believed that the intruder intends to commit a crime of violence against the occupants after entry. Okay, so that's our law, the model penal code. The use of, I'm just going to kind of go through it here, I think it's in the book. The use of deadly force is not justifiable unless the actor believes that the person against whom the force is used is attempting to dispose him of his dwelling, or attempting to commit, it actually spells it out, arson, burglary, robbery, or other felony theft, and either has employed or threatened deadly force, or the use of force other than deadly force would expose the actor or another in the presence of substantial danger or serious bodily harm. New York has those three elements as well for its castle law. So let me run through some examples to put this in play. Next slide here. Let's talk about Nate. Nate is a homeowner with 3 children. He hears the front door open in the middle of the night. He removes his gun from the nightstand and creeps silently downstairs. He sees a male figure tiptoeing in the middle of the night and is trying to enter Nate's daughter's bedroom. Nate shoots and kills the person known as Bob. Bob was Nate's daughter's boyfriend. Do we have defense here for Nate? What do you think of this one? Do we have an intruder must actually enter or be in the process of entering? Yep. Bob has entered. The residence was occupied. Clearly his daughter's home and Nate is there and 3 children. Well, Nate and his 3 children are there. And Nate believed that what? That this person might assault his daughter. So in this instance, Nate would be able to argue successfully the defense of his home. What about this? Nate gets his gun. He sees a male figure walking towards his daughter's bedroom door, but the street light is shining in from a nearby window and lights up the figure. Nate recognizes that it's Bob, his daughter's boyfriend, and Nate shoots him before he enters the bedroom. Maybe Nate doesn't like Bob. Is this defense of the home? We got somebody entering. We can call him an intruder, but maybe not. If Bob is there, maybe got invited by the daughter unbeknownst to Nate. We got the residence is occupied. Does Nate objectively, reasonably believe that the intruder intended to commit a crime of violence? That's a tough one. I would say no. I don't think Nate gets off on this one. Do you think you have to give a warning? Do you think you have to give a warning first? Stop or I'll shoot you. Get out of my house or I'll shoot you. The common law said yes, you should give and provide a warning. Most jurisdictions did away with that. Why do you think that is? You would think that would be somewhat reasonable. Maybe if somebody's trying to enter, that works. Get away from my house, I got a gun, I'm going to shoot you, and I'm going to call 911. Maybe, because they can get out, they can stop what they're doing and run. But what if they're in the house? Now it's you against them. If you say, freeze, I got a gun, get out, they might have a gun and turn and shoot you first. I think that's more of a safety view. Once somebody's in your house, it's occupied, and you think they're gonna commit one of those crimes or a serious crime, then you are free to use deadly force under the Castle Doctrine. I go on vacation. Because of break-ins in the area, I rig up a gun slingshot to my doors. If someone comes in, it triggers the gun to go off. Joe breaks into my house through the back door intending to steal my property inside because he knows I'm gone. And he is killed when he's shot by my slingshot gun. And I'm arrested for murder. Do I have defense of my home here? Castle doctrine? No. And why not? Because the place is not occupied. He's coming in my house. Yeah, he's not supposed to be there. And then the third element is there. He's there to steal stuff, but it's unoccupied. And this was actually a real case, I think I want to say, in Texas, where somebody rigged up this contraption and shot and killed an intruder. But nonetheless, they did away with this. This is not legal. This would be murder in some sense, or homicide, some level of homicide. Reason being, who can come to your house unbeknownst to you if there's an emergency? What if your house caught fire? Who comes to your house? The fire department. Who has to possibly check in if something's going on? Like in my example, there's break-ins in the area. What if someone needs, like the police or the law enforcement need to get in while you're gone and this thing goes off? That's the reason for that rule. And that is defense of property. One last topic in this area of use of force, law enforcement's use of force. And if we were in a classroom, I'd anticipate that this discussion would be quite interesting. But we're going to talk about it, the information that's in the book and in this lecture in a very abstract view. I'm going to give you the laws in this area, but obviously in recent events, this is certainly a topic that's on the forefront, and there have been some in New York State. The governor had passed some executive laws that really did away with law enforcement's ability to use force. Let's talk about the laws here. With regards to, can law enforcement use force to make an arrest? Yes, but non-deadly. It's supposed to be a non-deadly use of force, okay? They may use deadly force as governed by the U.S. Constitution. And there was a state, Tennessee versus Gardner, from the Supreme Court, that says that they can search and seize property without the court said the Fourth Amendment can't search and seize property without probable cause, and this also applies to the use of deadly force. Deadly force is a type of seizure. The use of deadly force must be scrutinized under the constitutional reasonableness. The only constitutionality of reasonableness or a circumstance that's reasonable under which law enforcement can use deadly force is to arrest or apprehend a fleeing felon when law enforcement has probable cause to believe that that suspect poses a significant threat of death or serious physical injury to the officer or others. Those are the only two circumstances where law enforcement can use deadly force. So to put this in context, if they're trying to prevent some sort of crime, what kind of crime is it? Okay. If it's think about it as a petty theft. In New York, petty larceny, petty theft is taking something that's worth less than $1,000, and the suspect is running from the scene. Can the police open fire? No, they can't. It can't happen. And when we're talking about law enforcement's use of force, and if they inappropriately use force when they're not supposed to, they're subject to arrest and prosecution. But I'm going to side note this for a little bit. But law enforcement is given, as well as prosecutors and judges, by the way, and with judges having the highest level of immunity, is they're immune for a lot of things that they do because they're in a position that, and I'm not making excuses, I'm just telling you what it is, what's out there, is they have immunity for a lot of the things they do because they have to make split-second decisions under some extreme circumstances to prevent themselves or others being hurt. Nonetheless, they cannot use deadly force unless they have probable cause, and that is something I hope you've learned in criminal procedure, probable cause. They have to have a reasonable basis that this person poses a significant threat of death or serious physical injury to the officer or others. No other reason. No other reason. So if there's a police officer chasing someone and you pull a gun out of your waistband and you turn towards the cop and you get, they can shoot. If it's not, if you're pulling out your cell phone out of your waistband, out of your pocket as you're running from law enforcement, what are they going to think that is? They don't have time to like, oh, let's check that out. Let's wait to see what it is before we shoot, because it could very well be a gun and they could be shot first. So I'm going to leave you with one more example. Maybe I got a couple more examples. Neighbors call the cops about a dispute that's happening next door. The cops arrive. It's a gated fence. One officer sees a man chasing a woman. She's all bloody. He's holding a knife. The gate is locked. The cop can't get in. The officer sees the man push the woman down to the ground and is standing over there with a knife. What else can happen here if the officer shoots the man? Man falls over and he's dead. Is this a proper use of force in this situation? Yes. What if the police officer said, stop, I'll shoot? Would that give the man the ability to have a split second to kill the woman? Most of the time the officers are going to be yelling, stop, and shoot. But in this instance, this situation, this is a reasonable justification of law enforcement's use of force. How about this one? Rex is working alone at a grocery store late one Friday night. And he notices Ruth, a suspicious woman who is quite small and wearing a long coat, kind of hanging out at the corner. He sees that a plainclothes police officer is buying some milk in the back of the store and has also noticed her. Suddenly, Ruth pulls a rifle out from under her coat, and though having a great deal of trouble holding the weapon steady, points it in Rex's direction, saying, "Give me all your money." And the plainclothes officer realizes what's going on, moves carefully toward her. Second after Rex gives her the money, the officer lunges at her, knocking the rifle away. She escapes and runs into the parking lot. The officer aims his gun at her leg in order to wound her, but ends up shooting her in the head. Is that justified? Was he going to let her run off? He has probable cause to make an arrest. He accidentally hits her in the head. How about if Rex picks up the rifle, aims it at Ruth, and shoots, killing her? Is Rex justified? I think in the first instance with the law enforcement agent, he might be okay on the use of force, even though she kind of got away and he kind of stopped what was going on. He's going to keep her from running off, and his intent was to shoot her in the leg. That's going to be a question for the jury to decide. There's no easy answer there. What about Rex? He picks up the rifle and aims it at Ruth and shoots and kills her. Probably not good on the part of Rex. How about, can a citizen prevent a crime by using, that's my example, can a citizen prevent crime by using deadly force? Citizen's arrest. I am going to leave that. I'm clicking on over. Rex picks up the rifle. Can a citizen prevent a crime by using deadly force? They can. Yes, they can. There is a such thing as a citizen's arrest. I'm not going to go into it here. I believe there's a little sample of it in the book because it's rare. It's not something that happens all the time, even though I've heard people say I can make a citizen's arrest. You better have the actual proof that goes along with it, or you could be subjected to your own lawsuit. But nonetheless, a citizen can prevent a crime by using deadly force. And I think this is a scenario that's in our recent news from down in Georgia, where there's those two individuals claimed, when they shot the jogger, claimed that they were trying to prevent a crime, and their story didn't hold up. But anyhow, that finishes this discussion on defense. But we do have some more, I should say, self-defense and defense of others. But we do have some more defenses to cover.